What's the worst date you ever had? He was over an hour late, no text or call, and when he finally showed up, his excuse was, "Sorry I'm late, my mom had to take a sit." I had a date send her drink back several times and eventually had our server bring out all of the ingredients in separate glasses so that she could mix it herself, the right way. What's worse is we were both in the service industry at the time. It was with an undertaker's assistant. He'd circle every topic of conversation back to corpses. Me. "So, do you know what you're gonna order?" Him. "Well, I was thinking the steak. But I had eaten steak when we got the river guy in, and now it makes me feel queasy." I ended up leaving after half an hour. I went to a New Year's Eve party with a guy the first had been chatting with for months. When we get there his friends asks him where his girlfriend is, and they were not referring to me. I went out for a smoke at that point and he went after, saying she was boring and he was gonna break up with her. I didn't hang out with him for the rest of the night. I guess I should thank him because I hooked up with the party host instead and we've been together for 7 years. Met her at a bar. She ordered food but didn't eat it since it looked disgusting. It looked fine. So we left to go to a different restaurant and on the walk there, she kept ducking and glancing at the sky like she was being attacked by bats. She hardly said anything over then whole date. It was like pulling teeth to get her to talk about herself. At the second restaurant she took forever ordering and again didn't eat because the food looked disgusting. Emailing about the date afterwards, she admitted that she was high on ice, which I guess is some kind of meth. Went to get drinks with a girl. Talk for about 20 minutes when she says, "I have a boyfriend, but I'd still like to have sex with you. My boyfriend only lets me have sex with black guys though. So we'd have to film it and you'd have to edit it to make yourself black." I had to tell her I'm not that great of an editor. Also WTF. She started talking about her life story from childhood to that day. Year by year. With every single traumatic story and emotions. That was our first ever date and she didn't even let me speak for that duration. I was like, oh okay, she is now talking about high school, 6 more years left. Hold tight. I went on a date with a guy who picked me up and said he just had to swing by his work before we went to the restaurant. No problem. He works in a dental office as an assistant, so he invites me into his work. The office is clearly closed and no one is there. And all the lights are off. Okay, a bit weird, but maybe he just forgot something really important that can't wait until tomorrow morning to pick up? Nope. He's going to the medicine cabinets and taking out a few bottles of ketamine. Okay, I'm now an accessory to theft of dental anesthesia. There was no second date. Literally sit myself on a date once. Wasn't technically a date, but the guy had a farm. He took me to see the animals feed. ECT. I walked away for a few minutes and overtrusted a fart. I just looked at him and asked if he could please take me back to my car. He wanted to know why and I said, because I pooped in my pants. Guy had a super nice truck and made me sit on my feet all the way back to my vehicle. We actually ended up dating for 2-ish years. And somehow me sitting myself on the first date was the end of all jokes. Had a girl openly flirt with the bartender in front of me. She says she wasn't. But handing him her own phone and asking for his contact info in front of her date seems like it to me. Met her for dinner. We seemed to hit it off well in the first few minutes. Until I started feeling the worst pain ever in my side. Turns out I had a kidney stone. I unfortunately had to nope out of that one very quickly. She had blocked me via text when I abruptly left dinner, so she never got the message that I ended up in the hospital. I didn't see her for years until we ran into each other at a bar. Me with a different girlfriend. Her with her husband. I explained what had happened. She felt pretty bad. But hey, no long-lasting harm done. I bought her and her husband a drink. Chatted for a few. And left them to finish their evening together. Got set up on a blind date once between mutual friends. She shows up to the restaurant already a little tipsy. Orders multiple appetizers and only takes like 1 or 2 bites from each one. Then she proceeds to order 3 or 4 more drinks and is visibly drunk at this point. She gets up and says she's going to the bathroom and staggers off. About 15 to 20 minutes go by, so I try to call her several times but no answer. Finally I decide to pay the check and just leave. About 2 hours later I'm sitting at home and I get a call from an unknown number. It's the police department. She was picked up on a DUI on her way home after she ditched me and gave the cops my number to see if I could go bail her out. Went to brewery. Date said I had hairy arms and that meant I was thorny. Said, "You look really awful in this light." And then tried to dig out of that hole by saying in his native language that was a term of endearment long-term couples said to each other. 0/10 did not date again. We went to dinner and he started chatting up the waitress. Like interrupting me every time the waitress came over and talking to her for a few minutes instead. After a couple times I just pulled my phone out and started scrolling through Reddit and he complained when he noticed I was on my phone. Cue a lecture about my generation. He was like 6 years older than me. IIRC. Then he got mad when I wouldn't suck his dig in the parking lot. I ended up going back inside the restaurant and calling a friend to pick me up. Dude's car was still sitting there when I left. Frock you Jason. I went over to a boy's apartment I had hung out with a few times already to watch a movie. In the middle of the movie he stuck his finger in my belly button. We weren't even cuddling. Just randomly turns towards me and puts his finger in my belly button. I said to him, "Get your finger out of my bully button?" To which he responded by making a weird noise similar to an adult using baby talk and saying coo coo to a baby and wiggled his finger still inside my belly button. I left immediately. Never talked to him again. And my friends still refer to the situation as belly button boy. Showed up to a Tinder date where we agreed but she wasn't there. Texted and she said, they were around the corner. Come to find her, mid-20s divorced socialite, and her friend, mid-40s salesman, had been drinking all day and were proper sit-faced. Proceeded to join them at the table where she proceeded to talk about the married guy at the next table and kept walking by and dropping things so she could bend over in front of him. Then some racist talk and some cocaine use, them not me. And then they decided, mercifully to ditch me because I was no fun. We met at a trailhead to take a walk. He started farting right away. Then he opened his backpack and got an apple. He proceeded to eat the apple. Didn't offer me an apple. Just ate his apple and farted. It was a double date. She was more interested talking to the other girl throughout the whole thing. Found out later from the other guy that his girl cheated on him with my date. Reposting my first Reddit comment from 11 years ago. I wasn't feeling great, but decided to meet anyway. We met at a Belgian beer bar. She was gorgeous, fun, and totally into me. I felt a gas pain, so I leaned forward slightly to quietly relieve the pressure. I completely and explosively shat myself. The odor was immediate. I excused myself to the bathroom, but the damage was too great. I walked out of the bathroom, muddy panted, out of the bar, and boarded the train for home. The date was nothing compared to the horror of the following 3 weeks. Recovering from E. coli. Was on a first date. Went to the bathroom. Asked the guy to watch my coat. Came back and my coat was gone. It had my cell phone, wallet and keys in it. Guy was too busy chatting up the bartender. Hadn't even seen the guy take it. We had to Uber back to his house so he could get his truck and drive me home. Had to wake my roommates up to let me in. Had no ID, cash or way of contacting anyone for days. Ended up tracking down the guy who stole it but only got back my phone. He threw out my wallet, keys, with fob on it, and coat. Guy the first was on the date with never contacted me again. Most expensive worst first date ever. Came out from a movie, late at night, and date's Camaro was stolen. Apparently, he called his wife, that I did not know he had, and let her know where he was and what happened. She showed up and realized he was on a date. She started chasing me around the parking lot telling me she was going to kill me. Saved by the cops who showed up just in time to take the auto theft report. She sat down and went on about how great her career was, how she was a year younger than me but already middle management. Then after 30 minutes just said, "Can I go home now?" Got up, and left me with the drinks bill. Saddest was when I met a date at the bus stop outside the cinema. She was looking around worried until I said hello. She almost had tears in her eyes and replied, "I didn't think you'd want to show up after seeing me." She was a cute but curvier lass in early 20s and apparently had been stood up twice before. She wasn't the most mature, but was really fun. And lovely. Had I not met the now wife, I'd have seen her again. I hope she found happiness. I was brought up in Poland by Polish parents. University professors. Went to a Polish school, Polish university etc. Then I had a date with an American man whose grandmother was Polish. He grilled me on the language and criticized my pronunciation and corrected my grammar. This from a guy whose Polish vocabulary was maybe 100 words. He told me I speak like a peasant. Well, I gave this answer on a different topic, but it ties in with this. We were out on a date. We had been seeing each other for a while, close to a year maybe. She gets a phone call. Suddenly she looks destroyed. Her fiancé had just died in a motorcycle accident. Girl I met online claimed to be 24, turned out to be 16. Fortunately I figured it out before anything crazy happened, but man talk about dodging a bullet. Met a girl at a country bar one night in my 20s. We were both pretty drunk but hit it off pretty good. Ended up getting her number and we agreed we'd go on a real date. Fast forward to the date. She gets in my vehicle and she looks almost identical to my mom. I was mortified. I was polite and we went for lunch where I found out she also had a boyfriend. She wasn't sure if she was into. Never talked to her again. I had a date with a guy who spent the entire date whining about how much this or that sucked. Everything sucked. The food, the waitstaff, the movie, the fact that I took my own garbage to the garbage can after the movie, and most of all, the night shift computer people he saw who hung around the outside of their office, smoking. He complained about their high salaries. I pointed out that I was one of those computer people. No, I didn't mention how much I made. And that was the last date I ever went on with him. I never talked to him again. My wife wanted to plan our 13th wedding anniversary. I was excited because usually I plan it. She bought us some new golf discs, and after a quick supper we went to play. We hadn't played in forever. We were laughing and I had a great time. She served me with divorce papers and told me that date was a test to see if she still had feelings for me. I also learned that she was having an affair that started well before our anniversary. Edit. Holy cow everyone. I love you all. Your support in this is amazing. Thank you to everyone with the kind words. Honestly, I've had a rough couple of days, but having hundreds of people show me I'm supported. Thanks Reddit. When I was in college many years ago, before the advancement of cell phones and social media, I was chatting with a girl I met on a BBS who lived on Long Island, NY. I was 18 at the time, but lied and said I was 22 because she said she was 25. We spent a few weeks emailing each other, as well as calling each other. We even exchanged pics. When we finally met up, things blew up. Turns out we both lied about our ages. She was really 33, and lied because she thought she looked younger. She admitted she sent a college photo to me. We still had dinner together, but it was awkward as hell. We never spoke again. I got catfished. We talked for hours, and when it came time to pick her up I clearly saw it wasn't the person I thought I was talking to. I just gunned it and sped off. Tinder date. She looked nothing like her picture. While not ugly, just completely different. Picked the worst restaurant in town, which I looked past because everyone has different taste. We came back to my house and complained about not showing affection or touching her, so I started touching her and then got mad about wanting a hookup, which I didn't. But the final straw was when she decided she didn't like my house, which I had just bought and was proud of. She immediately wanted to go to Home Depot to buy stuff to start remodeling. It was by far my worst and weirdest date, and I hope she found a house to remodel. We didn't have much in common, but both were hinting at needing a bone, so we ended up back at my place. She then proceeded to do nothing, to the extent of expecting me to completely undress her, shoes and all, and then lay on the bed like a methed out plank of wood. First time in my life I've experienced being completely incapable of getting an erection. We had to call it right there. Accidentally texted, on the worst date of my life, to the girl I was on a date with. It was like the second or third date and I made her dinner in my apartment. After dinner I was doing the dishes and I came back out to the living room and she was cutting up lines of cocaine on my coffee table. In my late teens, I went on a mall date with a girl I met on Facebook. I showed up, and she brought her younger brother along. Her and her brother basically ignored me the whole time, so I basically just bailed and they didn't notice. Months later, I saw photos they'd posted kissing each other and stuff. They would make flirty comments on each other's photos and stuff. I think I accidentally intruded on some incest. Got a flat tire after picking her up. Dinner reservation was lost. CC got declined, so I had to walk to an ATM that was half a mile down the road. Missed show due to said dinner reservation being lost. Ran into my ex who tried to start a fight with my date. It was our first date. Somehow it wasn't our last. Guy kept trying to rank everything out of 10. Before drinks arrive he asked, on a scale of 1 to 10 how attracted to me are you? Scale 1 to 10 how well is this going? Etc. I couldn't even figure out if I liked him because he kept asking for rankings. Then he freaked out when I turned him down for a kiss. Full toddler style tantrum. I pre-ordered 2 drinks like normal. She shows up. She orders a ton of expensive items and drinks. All the time she is on her phone. I think the bill was around $350, but I already paid my part, so I walked out through the back and ghosted. Back when I worked at a deli, I ended up randomly hooking up with a customer. I got her number after we hooked up and I called her to set up an actual date for that weekend. Turns out we were just not compatible in the slightest. We went somewhere to drink where the music was too loud, and I could barely hear what she was saying. So there was a lot of, "What?" and me asking her to repeat herself. That, combined with the fact that we really had nothing in common, just led to a lot of awkward silences throughout the entire date. Never saw her come in the deli again after that. He brought his mom. I decided it wasn't going to work out for me. But I stayed. Because, I couldn't miss it. At least I can remember it as funny in some degree. We went to see The Italian Job, and he talked through the entire thing. All ridiculous smug BS about how he would have been better at being a criminal than they were, if he really wanted to. Afterward I wanted to go home, but he drove me to his house anyway. I had no idea where I was, so I just sat and waited for him to get bored of me and take me home. It took hours. He got into his hot tub and talked endlessly about how smart and rich and awesome he was while I just sat there making non-committal noises. Finally he agreed to drive me home. He tried to kiss me in the car and I flinched away. He told me it was a shame I was too immature for him. Yeah, what a shame. First date. Went over to her dorm. We had plans to cook lunch and go for a walk. I show up with sides. She has a package of chicken breast and nothing else, and is in her pajamas. And all of her roommates are there. I roll with it, improvise with that's in the kitchen, not much. Broke college kids, and start making a decent chicken Alfredo. 5 minutes in she offers me my choice from mini bottles. I accept because frock do I need a drink now. 5 minutes later she gets a call. Spends the next half hour on the phone loudly talking with her sister while I cooked. That was, by and afar, the worst date I have ever been on. I smoked a lot of weed at the time and had a date with a girl I met on OkCupid who was 420 friendly. She told me to bring some with me. So we met at a Mexican restaurant at 7:30 and smoked in my car before going in. As soon as we finished the bowl, she was like, "Oh, I forgot. I have work at 8 tonight. Bye." So she either went through all that effort to get smoked out one time, or she lemon-lawed me but still wanted to bum a smoke session off me. Either way, I was high as frock and wasn't going to not get some enchiladas. So I went in and got a table for one. I was on a Tinder date and we met at a bar. She was a bit late so I have sample of their whiskey selection. Anyways, 10 minutes later a girl comes towards me and I reach out for a hug. She looks a bit confused but hugs me nonetheless. As we stop hugging, two things happen simultaneously. 1, my Tinder date arrives, and we lock eyes. 2, the waiter, still in my arms, tells me they just changed shifts and she will be my server this evening. My anxiety kicks it into high gear and I am barely able to fathom what's going on, much less explain to either of them what's going on. Went to the movies with a girl. The movie was so bad. She ate all of the popcorn. She fell asleep for half of the movie. And she was glued to her phone after the movie. I was 16 and took out the hot girl from school. Had a few classes with her and she seemed pretty normal. I picked her up and she took me to see The Passion of the Christ in theaters and spent the whole drive home talking about Christ dying for our sins as I sat in complete, horrified silence. When I dropped her off she offered me a blowthrob. It was the single most confusing night of my young life. Edit. I had no idea she was religious or we were going to see the movie until we got to the theater. Edit 2. I was a 16-year-old boy and she was still the hot girl in school. Of course I took the blowthrob. First date, we went out for dinner. I ordered a wrap. When I went to eat the second half, it was cut in two. He said, "You're still hungry?" Needless to say, there was no second date. Chatted online with this dude for some time and when I met him in person, he's my first cousin who is married, by the way. When I was 16. Male. I went on my first ever real date with a girl. I really liked her and was obviously super excited. My hair was a little scruffy at the time but not what you would even call long. Just maybe a bit over my ears. We get seated at the restaurant and the waitress walks up behind me and the first thing she says is, "Hello. What can I get started for you lovely ladies?" A piece of my soul left my body and never returned. It was a blind date set up by a mutual friend. We met at a restaurant and just as we sat down, he waved at a couple just entering the restaurant. They came over and sat at our table. After that, it was like I wasn't there. So when the waiter brought our dinners, I immediately asked for a to-go box, paid for my dinner and left. He's now an elected state official. Met a really sweet girl on Bumble. FaceTimed and talked with her for about a week before meeting. It was during COVID so I was going to her house for our first date. She clarified no hookups ahead of time. Totally cool with me. I get there and she is wasted. She was trying to flirt by negging me. And I hate that shit. Kept hitting and tastelessly teasing me. She was so belligerent she put a pizza in the oven only to forget about it and then put cookies in the oven at the same time. We were sitting on the couch while I was plotting my escape when she randomly took her pants off and stuck her fussy in my face. "Put your mouth on it," she said. I was like, "Absolutely not." To which she replied, "Lick my butthole." I walked her to bed, turned the oven off and got the frock out of there. Not my worst date. But the guy's worst date for sure. Met a guy at a party. We sort of clicked and he invites me to his job's formal holiday party. He picks me up and it had been raining a lot so I take the paved path. He walks up the hill, slips, falls, rolls, and gets covered in head to toe mud. On his face even. Awkward laughter. Go to his parents' house. We were 18/19. And his parents proceed to laugh their asses off and he gets changed. Head to party and he blows a tire. This is before cell phones. So we hang out until someone took pity on us and called a tow truck. He was a smoker and I have asthma, so that didn't work out either. This happened to a friend of mine. She showed up to a restaurant and dude was already visibly intoxicated. He proceeds to brag about himself, asking her no questions about herself. Then this jerk-off starts to cry openly, saying he resents his parents. Loving marriage B.C. It taught him nothing how to date. AKA he thinks his bad luck with women is due to his parents and not the fact that he's the type of person who gets drunk and openly cries on a first date. Blind date number 1. She showed up in an outfit that would be sloppy for the gym and her third sentence was, "God, I'm so thorny. I haven't frocked in months and I want it so badly." Classy lady. Never called her again. Blind date number 2. She couldn't string more than 6 words together. Zero interests. Zero small talk skills. Apparently I wasn't hot enough for her anyway. Blind date number 3. She spent half of the time talking about her ex who had dumped her to become a priest. We texted for a while but she decided she wasn't over the soon-to-be reverend. Since then I've decided not to accept offers for blind dates from friends. Go on a dinner date with a guy as a first meet. Conversation is good. We go to his place. I make it clear we will not be having sex. He's fine with it. Everything seems good. To preface this next part, no, I'm an attractive woman but I have some damn crooked teeth. The top ones are fine but the bottom are pretty messed up. It's never caused me an issue in dating and most men say they haven't noticed it. I have pretty big lips anyway so they don't show a lot. Anyway, for some reason this man asks me what my biggest insecurity is. I say my teeth. He asks me to smile. I do. He says, "Wow, yeah, they're pretty frocked up," and that's all. I went home shortly after and never texted him again. Killed my self-esteem for a minute there. Had a date in high school to a class party at a steakhouse. The girl drank about a third bottle of Southern Comfort while I drove through the Dallas freeways. When she decided to give me head while I drove, gagged, choked and threw up all over my crotch. Cleaned up best I could and untucked my shirt. Hi DD. Met a girl through a dating site and we agreed to meet up for dinner. I learned very quickly that this girl had absolutely no sense of humor whatsoever. I don't even think she cracked a smile the entire night. The date just got more and more painful as the night went on. At one point, we were talking about online dating. She told me about a friend of hers that went out on a first date with a guy online. She said this crazy guy fell absolutely in love with her friend and said he wanted to marry her. So I said, "Oh, well, I guess I shouldn't have picked up this engagement ring on the way here." Then, she just stared at me blankly and said, "That's not funny." Yes, it is. Frock you. Didn't happen to me but it's worth sharing. A friend of mine was on vacation in Miami and met a girl at bar. They went on a date the following day and ended up both naked in the hotel pool at 2 a.m. She told him she needed to pee and grabbed the room key. After waiting 30 minutes he went to lobby to get a towel and a room key. She'd taken everything. Phone, suitcase, clothes, money, passport, everything. I got him at the airport back in the UK. I couldn't stop laughing for a year. The thought of him naked in Miami with nothing. I once went on a date with a girl who didn't tell me she was mostly deaf ahead of time. I don't know sign language. We had dinner at a loud restaurant. Yeah, that was awkward. At the end of the night she stopped the taxi saying this was her place. She then went into the ATM and took out some money. She handed me what she said was her half of dinner and then got back in the taxi and never saw her again. Maybe not the worst date, since she paid me back for dinner, but still weird. Got asked out by a really unattractive woman while I was stationed in Korea with the army. I said yes because it always bums me out when someone turns me down on a date. So I take her to a nice restaurant. We sit down, and the first thing she says, really loudly in this nice restaurant where everyone else is whispering is, "So I used to be a stripper." Yeah, I'd make a ton of money putting my ass in random dudes' faces. It went downhill from there. We did not have a second date. We went to a museum and he didn't showed any interest in the exposition and tried to ruin my experience at it. He said he liked me because I am light-skinned and alternative looking, and that is his type. He thought Cubism was something related to Cuba. He tried to forcefully make us go to another place but I lied and said I had something to do with my best friend. And lastly, 2 years from that date I saw him in the news of my country accused of grooming, harassing a bunch of girls and women and sexually assaulted at least 3 girls. Me. Any preference on where we go for dinner? Her. No. Your call. Gets a res at a nice sushi place. Me. At dinner. Hey. Are you feeling alright? You've hardly touched the food. Her. No, I'm fine. I just don't like fish. Less than hour, greater than. We're in Boston, which is generally well known for seafood. And you don't think of mentioning that you don't like fish? And you still don't mention it after I tell you the name of the restaurant that's very clearly Japanese? Da fuck? I found out she could no do anything without being stoned. We had met at a shaved ice dessert place to which she arrived late. Later confessing she's had to rush her bong toke and missed the bus. When she arrived, it felt like every conversation lead back to weed. And I'm a smoker myself but goddamn girl have some O2 with your smoke. Also doesn't help that she tried to steal my jacket.